I've generated over 50 million views on YouTube for my clients by leveraging one very simple framework. And that, my friend, is exactly what I'm going to teach you today. And by the way, those views, well, they've resulted in tens of millions of dollars in sales for my clients. So, what is this simple 5-step framework? It's something that I like to call HPIVC, or Hook, Promise, Intro, Value, CTA. And as I said, this is the exact same framework that I've used to generate over 50 million views. In fact, it's the exact same framework that I've used for every single video that I've scripted for YouTube. Now, with all that said, this framework is really just a way by which you can tell a story in a very simple yet effective manner, and a very good story at that. But before we get into that, there's actually something else that you need to understand. You see, not all views are actually created equal. And frankly, our goal isn't even to get millions and millions of views. Our goal is to make money. I mean, that's why we're on YouTube in the first place. We're not here to dilly-dally and be influencers and get brand deals and all that nonsense. We are here to simply generate more cash flow for our respective businesses. So that begs the question, how come all views are not created equal? Because to be completely honest with you, the number of views you get simply does not matter in today's YouTube economy. Instead, it's about who actually views your content. But more than that, it's about whether that viewer actually then sticks around for long enough to eventually turn into a loyal customer, because that right there is the goal. We want to turn viewers into paying customers. Because look, there are ultra niche channels with maybe a few thousand, maybe a few 10,000 subscribers that are making anywhere from 5, 6 to even 7 figures per month just by posting simple YouTube videos. So how do they do it? How do they convert just a few thousand viewers into a few thousand loyal customers? Well, it boils down to the exact 5-step framework that I mentioned to you previously. Because there is one metric that you need to dial in if you want to see any success on YouTube whatsoever. Because that one metric is what actually allows you to create not just a fan base, but really a cult following that will convert into buyers perpetually. So what's that one magic metric that you need to optimize for? Well, it's AVD, or average view duration. Now, why is AVD so important? Well, it's because the amount of time someone spends watching your video will actually determine the extent to which the YouTube algorithm continues to push out your video. But more than that, the amount of time someone spends with you, the amount of time someone spends watching your video, is also precisely what's going to determine whether they eventually become a loyal customer or not. I mean, think about it. If someone just watches a 30-second TikTok of yours, they're not really invested into you at all. That's why we've never cared for these short-form views, because frankly, they just don't convert. Sure, they're great for building brand awareness, but that's not really what we're focused on. I mean, sure, later in the game, that's maybe what you want. But right now, our mission is simple. We want to make money. But now consider this. If someone spends 15 minutes a week watching your YouTube for months and months on end, think about all the trust, think about all the credibility and authority that you build in that person's mind. Because these hours create a real investment into you. But here's the thing, that viewer is now not only invested into you, but you've created an entire parasocial relationship that you can now benefit from. Because that is the exact parasocial relationship that is required for you to build trust with your viewer. So in short, the longer you keep someone watching your video, not only will YouTube continue to push out your video for longer, but you'll also be building the very trust required to convert a viewer into a customer. And now I'm going to reveal the exact framework that I've used to maximize AVD so that you can convert and really next to indoctrinate your viewers into paying customers. And mind you, this is the exact same framework that has generated over 50 million long-form views on YouTube. And by the way, this includes some of the most viewed videos in this weird and wacky niche that we're all in. So let's get right into it, because it starts with the hook. Now, the job of a hook is honestly very, very singular. You just need to grab your viewers' attention. That's it. Now, there's a plethora of ways to do that, but there's one rule that you have to abide by, and that is that you cannot rely on clickbaity garbage. Because when someone makes the choice to click on your video, they clicked on it for a reason. They clicked on it for the thumbnail and the title. And that means that your hook needs to validate the feelings and validate the reasons by which that viewer decided to click on that video. That means your hook must confirm the intention the viewer had in mind when they clicked the video in the first place. Let me explain by example. If a video is titled, let's say, how to make money on YouTube, well then the hook has to relate to how to make money on YouTube. It's like if you clicked on a video on how to change a tire and the first hook was, hey, here's how to write a cookbook, you wouldn't be very happy about that. You'd immediately click away from the video. And the exact same principle applies here. So, in summary, your hook has to be an extension of your title. Now, beyond that, your hook can be virtually anything. And I really mean that. Your hook could be a surprising fact, it could be an accolade of yours, it could be a crazy statistic, it could be an anecdote, it could be literally anything, as long as it gets the viewer's attention, as long as it gets the viewers hooked. You see, if people don't even make it past the first 30 seconds of your video, well then that's just gonna destroy your AVD. And by extension of that, your video will never perform. Now that brings us to the next prong of this 5-step framework. And that, my friend, is the promise. You see, when people watch YouTube, they're looking for solutions to their problems. And that means that within the first 30 seconds of watching your video, someone should know exactly what they're gonna get out of watching your video. In other words, they need to know exactly what the solution to their problem is. Because look, this isn't some suspense thriller movie where you just want to drag things out all the way to keep it interesting. In fact, it's the exact opposite of that. You need to give people what I call a promise. Think of it like this. When you wrote 5-paragraph essays in school, you always had a thesis statement. Well, the promise of your video is honestly not dissimilar to that. In one sentence, you should tell the viewer precisely what they're going to get out of watching the video. You need to really give people a roadmap of what's to come. And you can really approach this as a roadmap. You want to say, hey, we're going to cover X, Y, and Z. And by the end, you'll therefore understand X, Y, Z. Because if people don't know what's coming, well then A, they don't know what value they're going to get out of the video. And B, they're not going to care enough to stick around. Right? When someone watches a movie, they make a commitment to sit down and watch the movie. On YouTube, it's the exact opposite. In fact, most of the time when someone hops on YouTube, they probably know they shouldn't be on it. They probably know there are 10 other more important things that they should be doing, yet they find themselves on YouTube. That means it is your job to keep their attention on the video. And the way by which you do that is by telling them exactly what's gonna happen. So forget trying to make your YouTube video some cinematic masterpiece. You can do that if you don't want to make money. But if you're here to make money and convert viewers into buyers, you have to give people a mental mind map and what I call a promise of what's to come in the video. Let's exemplify, because when you started watching this very video, I gave you a promise. I told you that I was going to give you the exact framework that I've used to generate over 50 million views. And that is precisely why you stuck around, and that is precisely why you're still here. Because now I'm delivering upon the promise which I gave you at the outset of this video. And so here we are. And that brings us to the next prong of this 5-stage framework, which is the introduction. Now, the intro can sometimes actually be woven into the hook and promise of a video, which is actually exactly what I did here. But the point of the intro is very, very simple. You want to introduce yourself as the speaker to your audience, because odds are most people watching you will not know you, and therefore you need to introduce yourself. You need to give people a reason to listen to you. In essence, the intro is where you remind existing viewers why they ought to listen to you, and it's where you tell new viewers why they ought to listen to you. You need to explain why you're qualified to speak about whatever it is you're speaking about. So in my case, I've told you that I've been doing this for years, that I've generated 50 million views in the process. That is my claim to fame. That is why you should listen to me when I tell you all these things. So once you have your intro, once you've established that credibility, once you've established that authority, now we really get into the thick of it, because now we get to the actual meat of the video, namely the value. So the value part is where you quite literally deliver the value. This is where you give people the real solution that they've been seeking. But the thing about the value section is that you need to actually keep things interesting. That is how you get a high average view duration. So how do you keep things interesting? Well, there are a few different techniques you can use here, and I actually have a whole other video coming out about that. But let's just scratch the surface a little bit. Because in short, there are 3 rules that you must abide by. Number 1, always use examples. You see, people just learn a lot better when they're given examples. They're simply far more memorable than whatever theory you can feed people. I mean, it's really like when you were learning math in school. The teacher could tell you all the theory in the world, you could know exactly how the process works, but until you actually did it yourself, until you actually saw the examples on the board, you don't really know anything at all. Now, the second rule is that you always have to use analogies, because analogies are another great way to cement your ideas in someone else's head. But more than that, analogies simply make things more interesting. And the third rule is to always use stats and numbers whenever you can. And this is another one of those tricks that really just kills 2 birds with 1 stone. Because when you have real numbers and you have real statistics, well, that immediately gives you a lot more authority and credibility. Because having those stats proves beyond the shadow of a doubt that what you are saying is unequivocally true. But more than that, numbers actually make things more memorable. And the reason is that this taps into something called the von Restorff effect. Now, what is that? Well, it's basically the theory that when you have something that stands out, it becomes much easier to remember. For example, if I were to list off apple, banana, carrot, octopus, pear, well, the octopus stands out. Therefore, you're going to remember that I said octopus amidst of all these other fruits and vegetables. And the reason the octopus stands out is because it breaks the pattern. And using numbers and stats can have the exact same effect in your script. Because by using numbers and stats, you break the regular speech pattern that your viewer will become accustomed to throughout the duration of your video. Because normally, we just use words. We don't use numbers as often in a regular speech. Numbers also trigger something called visual thinking. For example, if someone says 57% of people like hats, well, now you can visualize that more than half of people like hats. Versus if someone just said majority of people like hats, well, you wouldn't visualize that as readily. So specificity sticks when woven into a story. Now, there are plenty of other ways to increase AVD, but we'll just have to get to those another time. And that brings us to the final part of this 5-step framework. And that, my friend, is your CTA. Now, the CTA is where you actually make money. This is where you call people to action and where you say, hey, I've just told you how to solve this problem, and I can help you solve every other problem that comes with it. Now, your call to action should be exceedingly simple. Because mind you, these are regular YouTube videos we're talking about. We're not talking about VSLs here. We're talking about your weekly uploads. And VSLs, well, they're honestly a topic for another video. Now, the real choice you need to make when it comes to your CTA is whether you have a hard CTA or a soft CTA. And honestly, I always say you should err on the side of the soft CTA. So what does that mean? Well, a soft CTA can either very subtly mention your program, very subtly mention your product, just as a sidebar at the end of your video, or better still, you can suggest that people watch another video of yours, which just so happens to be your YouTube VSL. That way, you can constantly funnel new traffic to your VSL where you actually have the hard CTA and where you actually do the selling. And honestly, that will almost always be the best move. But of course, every now and again, a video lends itself perfectly to a hard CTA. And when you've built up enough goodwill, you can certainly have a hard CTA. But please use them sparsely, because people absolutely hate being sold to. But keep in mind that the counterfactual to that is that people love having their problems solved. So always frame your CTA as a solution to someone's problem rather than a means to your end. And again, make sure that your CTAs always simply direct people to the next stage of the funnel. And that, my friend, is the exact 5-step framework that I've used to generate over 50 million views on YouTube. I mean, I've literally used this for every single one of my videos. And throughout all of those, I've generated tens of millions of dollars for my clients. And with that, I'll see you in the next one.